Hello, my name is Dan Sulpizio. This is my persuasive speech, and this is my audience right in front of me. Now we're here today to discuss the Confederate flag. Now the Confederate flag is not a symbol of racism. It actually represents freedom. Many people do not understand the history and symbolism of the flag, and are persuaded and influenced easily by the media and by others around them, everybody else's opinions around them. Now the recent news of shootings and the perpetrator being pictured with the Confederate flag has really fueled the controversy and led to the eventual removal of the flag from the South Carolina Capitol buildings. The governor, celebrities, and people with much influence and exposure are in favor of not using the flag at public events and its removal, of course, from any governmental property and buildings. Now, it helps to understand that the Confederate flag as we know it today was actually called originally the Confederate battle flag. We got that, of course, from usflag.org. It was originally flown on ships at sea and on the field of battle. We must understand that symbols like the Confederate flag don't actually have a meaning by themselves. The flag is just cloth, it's just a fabric. The meanings actually the symbols carry is what humans attach to it. So the symbols that humans have attached to it are what spreads to others, and that's what that spreads like wildfire. The symbol itself then is constant, but the value that it symbolizes is not. Now, the origins of the flag might also help us understand what the flag represents. Now, it's an easily distinguishable battle flag. It consisted of a square, blue St. Andrew's cross on a red background. The cross contained 13 stars, one for each of the 11 states that succeeded, plus one for both Kentucky and then also Missouri. The rectangular-shaped flag that is most common today, though, that we see, was called the Navy Jack flag, and then later the Confederate battle flag. The flag was a symbol of the Confederate States of America, which of course was the losing side of the Civil War. Now the flag was kept out of popular culture until the middle of the 20th century. Southern soldiers waved Confederate flags in World War II, but they were merely seen as signs that the Southerners were in the war alongside Yankees and fighting royalty. Now white Southerners see the flag as a symbol of their distinctive and proud Old South culture. Since the days prior to the Civil War, Southerners have retained the ideas that the South is a unique and hospitable and gentile place. To many white Southerners, there is no image so sacred and meaningful than the Confederate flag. It's a symbol of a sacred memorial to the bravery of their ancestors. Northerners, on the other hand, are part of states in the Union, view the flag as a symbol of slavery and separation of the country. It does not represent unity to them. It actually represents the opposite, separation of the states. Now, groups like the KKK and white extremists have aided in the misconception of what the flag represents by using it in rallies and demonstrations and really cementing the poor ideals of what the flag actually represents. The Confederate flag now is no longer flying high above the South Carolina State House. We've all seen that in the news recently on CNN, etc. It has sparked an enormous amount of debate, as you're well aware. The flag was placed above the actual State House back in 1962. It was a response to the Civil Rights Movement. Blacks in South Carolina see the flag as a symbol of racism and slavery, which is completely understandable considering its history. Many Southern whites, though, see the flag as a symbol of their proud, distinctive heritage, as we said earlier, and the gentility of the South. Now, many believe that the Civil War was based on the fact that the Confederate States had slaves. This is an untrue disclaimer, and it also places representation on the Confederate flag. This was not actually the reason of the Civil War. The war was over money funding the Northern Union's government and preserving the union of all states. In fact, it is widely unknown that most of the Union's generals actually had slaves themselves. The Union's generals had slaves themselves that served them in their homes. We got that from Rulin.com. In fact, many of the states had slaves up until and then after the Civil War. And it wasn't until much later that the slaves were abolished. That comes from slavenorth.com. Now, newer generations from the 1980s until the present day are less influenced by older generations. They are less likely to be aware of the history and negative use of the flag and what it stands for in some points of view. Now, fresher and newer perspectives, as well as open-mindedness, have aided a different way of thinking. Now, older generations, on the other hand, from the early 1900s until the 1960s, those generations were able to easily pass on perceptions and opinions from generation to generation. They had the ability to easily influence the next generation because of the lack of education and the lack of media coverage of the times. So in conclusion, as you can see, it's not the flag that creates the controversy. It's the people who use it to symbolize something that it isn't. It's like the idolatry of biblical days. People chose to label and worship idols because of their value, and not because it truly represented and symbolized something. Instead of following the crowd and being easily influenced by the media, let's research the facts to form our own opinion. The Confederate flag represents the heritage of the people of the South and the kind and gentle way of its people and the land. Thank you for being here. Good night.